Back to the Notes in the Garden podcast. This episode is going to be a little different. We're actually going to talk about ourselves, something that I'm personally not very comfortable doing, but it does have an end goal to it. You know, becoming musicians, becoming associated with Musikgarten, becoming music teachers in general, can take on a life of itself. It doesn't have the same path for every one person. So let's discuss how we got into this business. So the first question we have, what experiences as a child influenced you musically? So Ellen, you get to jump this one off.
So I would like to start by saying that my grandmother was a piano teacher, a traveling piano teacher during the Depression. And she actually supported her family with the money she received. She got paid the day of 25 cents per lesson. And her father was an organ builder in New York City, and Andrin organs. So music has always been in my family, and as a child, music was all around me. My aunts played, my mother played, my grandmother played, they did duets. We were always there in the midst of either singing or playing. It never occurred to me that you could be anything else than to make music. So as a young child, it's what we did. Shall I go on?
Well, I'm just amazed at our parallel lives, because you just revealed even more that I already knew about how our childhoods were similar, because my grandmother was a piano teacher.
Oh my God.
She also played the organ.
My mother did too.
And then on my grandfather's side, they owned the Spires, it was like the Spires organ and like sewing machine company. I don't know what it was, something like that. I have a picture of that, a photograph. But she also played the organ in movie theaters. She was a silent movie theater.
My grandmother did too. Oh my gosh.
I think you're the same person. I think this is nuts. So we'll have to explore this more deeply.
Yes.
I have some of her music though from playing in the theaters. One is called you might have it. It's called the Motion Picture Loose Leaf Notebook.
Yes.
And you open it up and the titles are like fire, or running. And it has her notes all over it. I think she was about 18 when she did that. But she also studied at Cincinnati Conservatory before it was a part of the University of Cincinnati. And so anyway, and my mother was a vocal performance major, and my dad played the piano, and all of my older siblings all learned to play the piano. But when we were little, our grandmother would play for us, my next oldest brother and I. She would play nursery rhyme songs on the piano, and we would act them out. And she did Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Quick, and we would jump over that candlestick, and we did it over and over and over again. So my brother and I had early childhood music experiences before early childhood music was a thing, and I'm really, really, really grateful for that. But there was a lot of music in the home, and my mom played all the time, and we would do sing-alongs, and I would play duets with my grandmother as soon as I started taking piano. And my sister really started teaching me piano when I was 4, since they wouldn't let me start lessons until I was 8. So she started me at 4, and by the time I was 8, 9, 10, I was playing duets with my grandmother every time I went over to their house. So lots and lots of music, and just surrounded with it through church and school and in the home.
Yeah, church was a big place. Not only did you sing, it was expected, but my family sang in 4-part. We were expected to sing the different parts, right? We always were doing rounds. That was a big car event, or just around the house. Someone would start singing, and then somebody would come back in the round. It was just what we did. Oh. My mother was more of the, she was the singer too, and she played guitar. That was her way to rebel against all that piano stuff. And she took folk lessons at a time during the 60s. And then she was the first to bring the guitar into the church. You know, not an organ, Which was quite the thing. And so we learned all those songs, and we'd learn them in part, and we'd learn them in
Yeah.
all
Oh, I
that.
remember singing in the car, like on long car trips. My mom would bring the Sound of Music book, and we would all sing that. And I
Absolutely.
remember hearing my sister do harmony for the first time, and I was like, what are you doing? And she said, it's harmony. And I was like, oh, okay. And you had to learn it quickly. You're like, oh, I better jump in, because
Yeah.
that's what people do. Not everybody did that.
Yeah. So
What about you, Jeff? What was your
Hey,
early?
yeah.
y'all sound like you have the classic kind of music childhood, man. For me, it was, I don't want to say it's totally opposite, but it's very different. I mean, I can't think of anyone in my family that I would consider musical. Not that they couldn't sing or anything like that, but I don't have anyone that really plays an instrument. Um, in my immediate family, my mother, she would say, she's like, man, I can't tune a radio. You know, she's that bad. You know, my dad has a decent singing voice. The big thing for us was they listened to a lot of music. My mom has a great record collection. You know, anything from huge Elvis fan to Henry Mancini. My dad, more on the rock and roll side. You know, we listened to, back then it was AM rock radio, in our car. We did the traditional singing Christmas carols and stuff like that. Of course, me and my brother did when we were kids, just running around. My brother's 4 years older than me. And church, again, church, like y'all said, was a big thing for us. Of course, I grew up and still go to an all a cappella church. So there's no piano, there's no organ. It's all, the congregation is the choir. So I was heavily influenced by that. And of course, back then it was all using your ear. And if you wanted to sing, you found somebody in the congregation who was a good singer. You sat near them. You learned the parts that way. First you would learn the melody, the soprano part. When I got older, I gravitated toward the bass, of course, and learning the bass parts and just learning it by ear. And now I sing the tenor, I'll sing whatever. But but I'm a school musician now. So that was huge influence for me. But we didn't have, we didn't do the family sing-alongs. There was nobody standing around the piano playing and singing and stuff like that. That wasn't my childhood.
But you were surrounded with music. That's an interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe not so much in your family, but in the community around you, there was music support.
Yeah.
Even in Girl Scouts, which I loved Girl Scouts because we sang. We sang at every meeting. We had an opening song. We had the traditional songs. We had the circle game songs.
Yes.
Yeah,
the rounds. I mean, that's when you start singing rounds is in scouting. It was for me, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, and just having that in your environment or in your community or in your environment, I think about, literacy, how you just having one book in the home will increase the chances of a child being literate, right? So for Jeff, having all of those records playing, all that music playing in the home, that went a long way to building your vocabulary of music.
Yeah, I will say music was there all the time. We always had either the stereo was going or the radio was going throughout the day.
Yeah.
And did you later on, did you do the whole band thing, in elementary school and all that stuff, or did you get?
Of course, yeah. I foolishly picked the violin, so joining the band got really difficult. But but yes, we had a string quartet. We did the Brandenburgs in my high school. I had a teacher there who did influence me to keep going and apply for Juilliard's pre-college. And so it was that school music that propelled me to the next step in my world.
School music is what kept me happy in school. It was just from day one. I was in the little choir that you had to audition for in 5th grade, all the way through, and started band in 4th grade, with the clarinet and switched quickly to the flute. And I played the flute through 7th grade, and I was bored with the melody. I was like, if I have to play the theme from MASH one more time and play that melody. So I looked around the band and I was like, who's doing harmony? Because I need harmony. And I looked around the band and I found the French horn. And I was like, that's my instrument. And I studied French horn all the way through college and I did marching band in high school. I still have very, very close friends from that. And just those band experiences are just such a huge part of my whole person, my whole life, and helped shape me. And then going on to play band, like I've played played in pits and bands in church, leading band and having to play chords and reading off of the charts. It's just helped really round me out. But I'm very thankful for those band opportunities. And Jeff, you played in band, didn't you?
Oh yeah. I remember, 4th grade when they would go around introducing you to instruments, and they bring in the music teacher. It was Bruns Avenue Elementary School, and it was a guy named Mr. Donald. And he brought all the instruments to the classroom, and of course, my brother had played clarinet, in elementary school and junior high, and I was like, I didn't like the clarinet. I didn't like the sound of it. I didn't like the look of it, So I wanted to play the sax. And I remember Mr. Donald looked at me. I walked up there and I was like, yeah, I want to play the saxophone. He was like, you're too little for that, man.
I've heard.
Yeah,
children.
he's like, you're too small for that. And I said, well, I'm going to do it anyway.
Good for you. Yeah.
That's the thing. That's like when I switched to French horn, the band director, Mr. Dutcher, he showed me, like, we went in our little room and he was like, this is how you buzz your lips, blah, blah, blah. And he showed me like the basics. The next day I came to band with my French horn, and he looks in the flute section. He's like, where's Amy? And I was in the French horn section. He goes, what do you think you're doing? I said, I'm playing French horn. And he goes, you can't play French horn. And interestingly, I just reconnected with him recently. And he said, you know what? In all of my years teaching, and he just recently retired, he said that I've only had 2 students who could do it. They could just come the next day and play the instrument. And he said, and you were one, and I'll never forget that. But, so he was a little taken by surprise, but yeah, it's you got to do what you got to do. So you wanted to play the saxophone, so you were motivated.
Yeah, I wanted to play sax, and I showed up for 5th grade with a sax, and he taught me sax, and
you just did it.
I just did it. Yeah, and back then you didn't. I can't say they went into great detail about music theory in 5th grade, and stuff like that. It was, if you press these buttons,
right,
you're going to play this note, kind of thing, So I'm glad there's no recordings of that stuff laying around anywhere from anybody. I'm sure it sounded pretty terrible, but. But no, it was great fun. I played sax from 5th grade through junior high, so to 9th grade, I guess. And I still have it at home. It's in the closet somewhere.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Violin, same. I still have them. And my violin teacher turned out to be, he was going to be in the National Symphony, but then he was going to be drafted. It was during the 60s. So he took a public school job. Otherwise, I never would have met such an influential character who not only realized that I could play the piano, but he would spend hours with me after school, and he would pull out violin. He was a fabulous violinist, and he would just pull out Brahms and Mozart and Beethoven, and we would just sight read through that stuff.
Such great experience.
Yeah, and gosh, and it never occurred to me how he had instilled a love for this music of just banging through it. He always said, well, we're going to skip the slow movements. We'll skip the slow movements, always, but we'd go through the fast stuff. And he was the one who said to me, why don't you apply for a city prep school? And at the time, I had no idea, I was sure. And when I got to do it, and then got in, I thought it was I still remember the day of walking through the hallway with the letter saying I got accepted to go to this fancy conservatory in the city on the Saturdays. I was like, wow, it was going to take an hour on a train, and I was going to go by myself, and I bring my books, and it was very exciting. Without that school and community support, I never would have taken that next step, which, still affects me today.
Yeah, there seems to be this theme of kind of influencers. You got your grandmother, you both have your grandmothers. I have, family full of music, even though they weren't musically trained or instruments. And, we're talking about our band. We still remember these people's names,
Yes.
To me, that's amazing. They're fun. It's fun. It's fun that they had that much influence on us,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Introduced it. Yeah. Yeah. So, after band, my experience is when I got to ninth grade, after ninth grade, I didn't want to go into marching band in high school. I was just way too cool for that. I was not going to wear those hats. I was not going to wear those outfits and uniforms,
Boy, did you miss out.
Yeah, probably so.
Marching band. Oh.
But I did.
No, you didn't miss out. My son was instrumental in quashing the whole marching band in our high school. He hated it also, and did everything possible. He told everyone that he couldn't march on Saturday. That was Sabbath.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because they made it compulsory for all band people
to
do it, and he hated that. He wanted
Well,
to
I was never cool, so there was nothing to. I couldn't defend my coolness. I was a geek the entire time I was in school, and I loved it.
Man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I switched to 10th grade. That's when I picked up the guitar. So
Okay.
You formed a band.
Not in 10th grade. I started playing guitar. Wonderful guitar teacher, a guy named Todd Miller. Still know him. Still friends with him. He lives in Cary, North Carolina now instead of Charlotte. And he, oddly enough, he got his master's degree, and he's teaching school and lots of other stuff. So he went beyond just being a guitar teacher. But he was a schooled musician. I think that's one thing that people don't understand about the guitar kind of tradition is most guitar teachers that I know are extremely schooled musicians, or at least the ones that I've learned under. There's this kind of perception in that guitar players are just these kind of idiot guys that play rock music or whatever, and they're so into their gear and so into all their stuff.
Well, that's the myth. That's the 60s myth. You just get up and start strumming along, and suddenly you're in a band.
Yeah.
But if you look at the background of most of the highly successful performers, they've got countless hours of study and understanding of what they're doing. But they're not going to tell anybody about it because that's just not cool.
It's not their personality. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where I started learning music theory. Really started applying all the ear training that I had really done in church that I didn't know I was really doing.
Yes.
Much like a music garden class, these kids are learning these songs by singing them, singing the patterns, doing all these things. I didn't realize I was doing that stuff.
Yeah.
So it was applying that ear training to the guitar first. And then he started teaching me how to read music and teaching music theory just from whatever song I wanted to learn. It wasn't forced. It was, okay, Jeff wants to learn this AC/DC song, which I did because I was 15 years old, 15-year-old boy, let's take it and teach music theory through this AC/DC song. And
that's awesome.
And you can,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Probably a much different experience than y'all had, I would think. I don't know.
Yeah, that's completely different from mine.
But there's similar, I think there's similar themes, like you're saying, Jeff, that, you're getting things that you don't even realize you're getting. You're getting this foundation of ear training, of hearing pitches and understanding pitch relationships without even knowing you're getting it. I mean, my brother and I used to just play games. We thought this was fun. We would play a game where one person would go to the piano, the other person had to be all the way across the room, and you'd play like two notes that were kind of low, and you'd go, is this one lower or is this one higher?
Oh, interesting.
And ear training games. We made it up. We thought, so anyway, you never know how these things are how they're going to build and establish that connection in your brain that you need to continue your music study. So I love the fact that we were all exploring and getting a variety of experiences and just having fun with it. Maybe that's the other aspect, is just the joy of just, exploring.
Yeah. So when do you think you played your first, what you would consider like a professional music thing? We'll call it a gig. When do you think you played your first gig, kind of thing?
Oh boy.
That's a really good question. You mean like
as a teacher or as a performer?
I think to me it boils down to a lot of different things. It could be the first time you played with the church choir. It could be the first time you got paid for playing music. It could be
okay.
Paid gig.
Where you had to be responsible for some part of the music activity going on.
Okay.
Church. All right. A wedding service, and I was supposed to play the walk down and an offertory and all that kind of thing. But it was a phone call. I was about 17 because I could drive, and I was told that I would have to do this at a catering hall. And when I got there, it was one of those places where you could do any kind of denomination kind of service. Mm-hmm. And they put me in a little tiny box with a little window, and I had to play looking out the window so that I could know when she got to the front. So I was used to looking at the music, not looking out the window. So I remember oh my God, but I made it and I got paid. And that was the most addictive thing that had ever happened to me, man.
Yeah, that is funny and nerve-wracking, but you made it.
Oh my God, I made it.
I think one of my first paid gigs was also a church where I had been asked to substitute. So it wasn't my church, and it was my piano teacher got me the job, and they were looking for somebody to just play, basically 3 hymns, and whatever the doxology. And I did that, and that was my first paying gig. But I started accompanying choirs when I was in 7th grade, and I give, again, credit to the teachers because they would audition students to be the accompanist. So they didn't hire accompanists to come in and play for these choirs. They always used students where I grew up in Centerville, Ohio. And I auditioned with like 5 other people and made it. And so my first accompanying job, not that I got paid for that, but man, am I thankful for it. And that was all the way back in 7th grade. So
yeah, a lot of those gigs were like during college. Like I remember accompanying a flutist, and we got a gig to play at the Junior League of New York City.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I did not know what a Junior League of New York City was. I just wore black and came into this building. It was like, what is going on here? This is a total different world. And here we are playing, flute and piano music, and people are just talking and they couldn't hear a thing. But we got paid, and it was like eye-opening. So a lot of these gigs were opening me to these social strata that I had never before ever experienced, in New York.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Same thing. It kind of bubbles up from there, and you just get all these different, gigs. From there on, you're gigging the rest of your life.
Oh
right?
my, yeah, you never knew what the phone would ring, and you'd say, yeah, of course I'll do it. And then you'd be in the most ridiculous scenarios.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we go on forever.
That's a whole other podcast. We could talk about all the different
and
the different pianos we've had to play.
Yeah, I think mine's kind of closer to Ellen's, where it wasn't a church, obviously, but it was closer in the age range. I think it was like 18, and ended up playing just a pickup gig at some bar club in Charlotte in a very, very, very bad neighborhood. And literally the two of the guys who were playing the gig with me walked out to my car and walked me inside the place.
Oh, whoa,
That's how bad the neighborhood was. And we ended up doing a mixture of like, I'd just gotten into jazz, so we played a mixture of like the Thelonious Monk tunes on top of Jimi Hendrix, because I was, of course, a rock guitar player. Jimi Hendrix, whatever, just to make 3 hours of music. There was no set list. No, we just like, hey, do you know this? Okay, let's give it a shot.
Oh yeah.
And kind of thing, and let it happen. But yeah, I got paid for it, and I was kind of like you. It was addictive. It was like, this is all right, to be able to do this,
Much better money than all my college friends who were spending hours on these minimum price, and I could do a gig and make as much in that hour as they were working 10 or 12 hours in the week. So yeah, that meant more time to practice, more time to do other things. And then you got to be known as the person they could call to do the cabaret, to do accompany the dance, to accompany the singers, and it just boom, 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 very addictive stuff.
Yes.
So let's move to another question. So obviously we talked about our love of music. Why did you decide to become a musician?
Well, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I think I loved it so much that I spent so much of my time at the piano. And my mom, in fact, had to tell me to go outside and play a lot of times. She's saying, gotta break away from the piano. And it really just was such an important part of my life. I think I just have always wanted to be a musician, except for like a weird time in adolescence, like in middle school, where I decided I was going to be an interior designer. And that lasted for, like a year and a half. And then I was back to music, and I just couldn't imagine life really without it. So it was never a question.
Yeah. I think we all have that rebellious stage, because I remember, in high school when my Juilliard teacher was like, well, DR, we'll definitely get you into Juilliard and you'll be one of the 200 pianists here. I'm sure you'll be in the middle of the barrel. And I was so insulted. And I thought, well, to you. And I thought, I'll become a pre-med. Just what do you think? And I went and I, applied for a university, pre-med, did all the sciences. And I found it so I kept connecting what we were doing to musical things. We do prisms of light, and I would say, oh, like Kandinsky, with the different colors of the piano. Don't you hear red when it's E flat? And the professor finally said, would you please move to the music department? And I kind of did, and never came back. And now 30 years later, my daughter is in her 4th year of medical school. So it's finally been realized, yes, someone's going to become a doctor in my world, but not me. Now it really came down to the piano was where I lived, but I just didn't know it for a while. It kind of went, I had to do it. And so, yeah. And do I regret not going to Juilliard for the undergraduate? No.
Yeah. Well, there's a little bit of a rebel in you, I'm kind of like that too. When I was getting ahead of myself a little bit, but when a teacher kind of throws you in and sort of middle balls you like that, not low balls you, but just says,
one up the crowd.
Like, I'll show you,
Just you wait.
Yeah.
Just you wait. Yeah.
So did I'm assuming both of you pursued formal college education. Can you give me the Cliff Notes version of your college career for music?
All right, I'll go first. So I attended something called New College. It was what's today they call honors college. This was a real 60s kind of thing with interdisciplinary as the new key phrase. and our classes were longer, and we had a senior thesis, and there were no basic set degrees. You created your own degree, and it worked perfectly for me. At the time, I didn't know any better. So I could mix my music and my art history, and I could wear tie-dye. I could go to the Met. I could be the musician, the cool person. I could throw pottery. I could wear strange glasses, the whole thing. I had the true university event, and I could play, and I could accompany anybody. So, like when I'd walk into the music, because I was new college, it wasn't in the music department. So I'd go in and play the pianos, and I would see people looking through the window like, who's she? We don't know who she is. I don't know. Is she better or worse? They'd actually, one woman actually came in with, now is a very good friend, and she said, who are you and why are you here? That was, but then of course, you got to know the people. So that my college, my 4 years was really touching, feeling everything, making wrong choices and correct choices, and playing a lot of piano.
Yeah, I went to Ohio State, and my piano teachers in high school encouraged me to go into piano, and my French horn teacher was encouraging me to go into French horn. And so I had to decide. and sometimes I look back on that and wonder if I made the right choice, but I think I did, because piano is something I really wanted to keep perfecting. Whereas I feel like with French horn, I sort of plateaued where I was like, I don't want to learn lip trills and how to play with a mute. So I kind of hit a wall with French horn, but I loved it so much. So I kept playing it all through college. But I went in for a piano performance at Ohio State and was asking for an emphasis in accompanist coaching. And they were all very welcoming. They said, yes, absolutely. And, scholarship me and stuff. And we'll work with you on the accompanist coaching. And of course they never did. And because that takes a lot of extra time on their part. And there was no degree for accompanist coaching or collaborative piano that they call it now. And but I did finish my piano performance degree, but somewhere around my junior year, I realized that there was this thing called the music ed degree. And I had friends who were getting this music education degree, and my now husband was in that program, and I thought they are getting a great education. So I tagged on, squeezed in 5 years, I squeezed in a second degree. So I did my other undergrad degree in music education, K through 12, with an emphasis in choral conducting, even though I was a band person, but I'd been playing for choirs for years. And it was just the shortest way, the easiest way for me to get that degree in just 1 extra year. So, but I'm really thankful for that, because I love directing choirs. So, and then I went on to, when we moved to Texas, I worked in a furniture store for 3 years. And then when my husband had finished his master's degree and I had helped pay for that, then I went back and got my master's degree at SMU and ended up getting a master's in piano pedagogy and was a TA. And that just ended up being a big shift in my career. And I'm really thankful, because it was sort of all my worlds coming together, in my music ed and piano, and then piano pedagogy, just a great combination.
Where did the kids fit in?
So I was hired at, you mean my kids, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the big complication for women.
Yeah,
you're going, ah!
Yeah, and then you stop and yeah. So I was hired by SMU. I was very blessed to be hired on faculty after I got my master's degree, and I taught at SMU in the pedagogy department for 6 years. And I always say I taught until I couldn't see the keys anymore, because I was expecting our first child. So so I left SMU. I stayed home with my children, and we have 2 kids. And wasn't until my daughter was in kindergarten and she was at a private school, that was when I first started tiptoeing back into teaching. And it ended up taking me into the schools, because she and her school, they needed good choral music education. So I was very thankful for them to hire me part-time. And so Ben would come with me to school, and some days, and I would teach, and that grew and grew and grew, and I taught in the schools in Dallas for like 6 or 7 years at Covenant School in Dallas. So and that kind of took me in a trajectory more of doing a lot of school stuff. So that's how I ended up in the schools.
Intrigue.
Yeah, and I used Musikgarten all through that. That's when I was teaching Musikgarten, was at that Covenant School in Dallas, which Jeff will remember. Yep. And we were piecing together, what can you use from Musikgarten in, K through 3? And I did. I used all Musikgarten stuff. Awesome. What did you do with your kids?
Well,
what happened when you had kids?
Yeah. Well, once I left school, college, I became the college dance accompanist. And I was mixing that up. And by then I had met my husband in New York City. So we were living in a wonderful duplex on 82nd Street. And I became a professional student at the 92nd Street Y. So I could play a lot of piano. I was accompanying. I was driving my car onto Long Island to teach in people's homes. And these would be big estates on the North Shore of Long Island. And then, I started getting bored. I mean, it was like, okay, I can do all this. What else can I add? And we had then bought a house in Queens, and I decided I would ride my bicycle as far as I could to the North Fork. And after I came back, I discovered Queens College. It was on the route. And I walked in, and I just walked in and said, hey, do you have any courses for musicians? And at that time, the head of the dean was there, and he said, well, tell me about you. And then he pulled me in, and I started to take, non-matriculated graduate courses. And I was just having a ball. I was just, I met Dr. Berkowitz, one of the great theorists. And I was meeting all these great people because all these top professors were teaching there. They were in all the conservatories, but they had to make money. So they were at CUNY also. So I would, go from my little house and bike there and do these courses. And then I got pregnant, and I still remember getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the final exam came. And the day of my final exam, my baby was born. And Dr. Berkowitz gave me a 100% for having a baby. So from that point on, it was all, family, family, family. And then we moved out to the Hamptons and family, family, family. And all of a sudden I began to realize I was missing something. Music had become in the background. The piano was there. I don't even remember playing it.
Yeah.
For almost 5 years. Just
yes.
Totally not there, but I was singing to my children and all the things I did as a kid. And then it just pulled me back, pulled you back. And I was getting Piano Explorer magazine or whatever it was, Etude or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And there was the ad for, at that time, Kinder music.
Right.
And I was like, I wonder what that is.
Yeah.
And I was teaching a lot of piano by then, in my little studio. And I kept hitting this wall for the first time of students who couldn't even sing. They didn't have any repertoire. They couldn't keep a steady beat. They didn't want to sing. There was something wrong with the system. All those books that were showing them where the notes were on the staff and FACE and all that stuff, it wasn't creating music. And I was like, I bought every book that you could. My library tripled trying to find the magic formula to get kids to become literate. And I kept hitting a wall. And so when I saw that, I said, why don't I try it? And then got pregnant. So another year later, went, and my very first training was with Lorna Heyge.
Yeah.
And it was like 7 days of her. Yeah. At that time, they were doing almost 7. No, it was 5. It felt like 2 years.
Yeah.
It was 2 years of training in 1 week. I sat there like, what is all this about young child? It was like my brain was doing the connections, and I never looked back. It was like I just like, I've got to do this.
Right.
And I remember the first, that was the summer, and by September I had every single program booked,
Yeah.
made the had no idea what I was doing. I was so not a teacher. And I learned hard. And then went back and did more of them. I got to meet all the other trainers, and then it flipped over to Musikgarten, and she dragged me with her, and never looked back.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's exact. We have some similarities there too, as far as timing goes, because I did also my first training with Lorna in Kindermusik and in Dallas, and then had Elise. And by the time Elise was born, it was like, it was Musikgarten. And I was like, I have to get my child in early childhood music. So I went and took my first Musikgarten class, which was the babies workshop, where it was like 3-hole punched paper. It wasn't even a published book yet. And so I took that workshop, and Elise was there with a babysitter in the other room while I was taking my workshop with Lorna. But, interestingly, I just want to say that when I was getting my master's degree, and I know, Jeff, you're probably about to ask about when we started, realizing that we wanted to teach early childhood, And when I was getting my master's at SMU, I met Kathy Mathia, and Kathy Mathia was also getting her master's, and she was getting ready to graduate, but she took a year with the person who was then at the head of that program, Dr. Nagodi, and they decided to survey 3 different curricula that could be used for a 4 to 5-year-old, because SMU had a piano prep program, K through 12, or really more like 7 through 12, grade age 7, and for a beginner, and they wanted to know what to do with parents who called and said, I have a 4-year-old who needs piano lessons. They really didn't have an answer for that at that time. So they took an entire year. We had several classes. We had so many kids in that program. And they started a group of these 4 and 5-year-olds in this method. And there was one that I think it was by Nuna.
The Nuna Bastion method.
No, it wasn't Bastion.
It was Nuna. I can see the front cover of it.
It's a bear, and it was called Barney, and he was a bear. So there was that. There was a Kathy Corey, I think, method maybe we were looking at, and there was and then we did Kindermusik. And so this class did this class did this. I didn't get to do the Kindermusik. I did the Barney bowing bear thing. And Kathy taught the Kindermusik and the Barney class. So I was with her in my class with Kathy, and we surveyed. So we did the whole year with these children, right? Then the next year, we put all of those children in beginner piano, and we looked at them, and we kept track of them. Oh, this child was in Kindermusik, this child was in blah, blah, blah. And we watched them in music, and I was blown away, because the ones who had taken that Kindermusik class with Kathy had this inner pulse. They had a graceful sense of movement and their approach to the piano. They could hear the music. They just were more graceful in everything that they did, and it seemed to just be a great continuation for them. Like, they were able to just do the beginning piano with so much more ease and understanding, and I was blown away. And Kathy graduated and moved on, and she taught in the prep program for a while and started Kindermusik there. And I thought, I got to get trained in this. And that's when I took my first training. And then when Kathy moved on, they hired me, and then I started teaching Kindermusik there, and piano, of course. But it was unbelievable to see the difference between those students. The other ones, there was really no change in them. They just seemed like a beginner piano.
Yeah, that disconnect got to a point in my studio where I still have this group of students who were not with early childhood, and then I had this group that was coming through, well, Kindermusik and the Musikgarten, and Musikgarten into the piano program. And it got to a point where I started to feel this schism in my brain. The student that had no background would come in, and I would have to almost think differently. It was a non-musical way, a visual, there's the note, can't count up, I know you can't hear it. And then on the other side, it was like natural language. I just have to go so me do, and boom, we were in. And I still remember Jill Hannigan saying, well, someone asked her, do you ever teach the letter names? And she was like, well, it's not a big deal. And
Yeah.
I'm still grappling with that. Isn't that the strangest little thing?
Yeah.
And I mentioned it on Facebook with this one student who, she is totally so me do, and yet for some reason she wanted to know the names of those notes on the staff, and it was just total confusion for her, as you can see. And that, every time those scenarios pick up, it reminds me again of why I want to be over here in that music garden, to the point that in my career, there was a point in my studio where I said to my husband, I can't take this anymore. And I dropped all of those students that were not music. And now the rule in my studio is you must have this in your background to study with me.
Yep.
The end.
Yes. Here. Yeah.
As Alana would say, the end.
Yeah. And another thing that Jill Hannigan says too is that it just to kind of put one more little label on that the people on the other side, that you dropped, it's like teaching typing. You might as well just be teaching typing.
Yeah.
So.
Also, that feeling of getting them early on. I've been getting a lot of calls during this COVID time of parents who want me to start their 12-year-olds and their 13-year-olds and their 14-year-olds, and I just refer them now. Yeah. Because I don't have the physical space, the mental space, to have to try to adapt them, knowing that their ear is there, it's done, that aptitude is set, and unless it's really good, I'm just going to it's like talking to someone who's never going to learn my language, or if they do, it's going to take a long time.
It's a struggle. It's a struggle because if you do get a transfer student, really at any age, our minds, we know that foundation that is missing. We totally, we're looking at this child and I visualize you've missed all of this stuff. And I can't bring all of that reality into I can bring pieces of it, and I can do what I can, but they've missed so much. And it's almost like a split personality thing. I have students that I have to teach a certain way because they didn't get that foundation. It's tough.
Yeah. So y'all
go ahead. I'm sorry.
So y'all went really into my last question, which is why did you go into early childhood music education? And it seems like you both saw something that was lacking from the students you were teaching piano. They just didn't have the grounding that they needed. Something in society had switched, and kids just didn't have that grounding anymore to be able to focus on the piano the way they really needed to, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Or let's make it bigger. Music. And I'll make a point of saying that to everyone who walks in. I always say we're using the piano as a component, but I'm developing the musician. And when someone walks in 13, 14 with no previous musical experience, oh my gosh, what do I do now? It's like it's like taking, I'm a skier, it's taking a person to the top of the mountain with no foundations. It's going to be a long journey down. We're going to have to do turn by turn, and oh my gosh, it may not happen, and it's going to be scary.
Yeah,
very scary.
The wedging all the way down that hill.
Yeah.
Oh, pain.
Dig in.
Pain.
Yeah, because I'm that 16, 17-year-old guy, and then even into college, who didn't have experience in solfege or sight singing or any of that stuff, so I had to learn it. I had a good ear. Yeah. It was just placing the names with the intervals, with everything else.
Right.
Yeah. And it is a struggle when you're that age to do it. So like when you're taking a student coming to you at 13, 14 years old and trying to, like Amy said, pull in some of this stuff, I feel that pain as a student, because I had to do that. And I feel so fortunate that my kids are doing it a different way than I did it now. Because it's not only the musical benefit though, especially during this time of COVID. my daughters are, they always score. They just did another testing in school. And right now they're scoring in the highest percentile in both reading and math. And a lot of that to me has to do with the music training they've had so far, you know?
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I'm sure that our early experience of singing and the stories that go with the singing, the fairy tales that we grew up with, but all that participation of our ear made me a better mathematician, made me a better reader to this day. And I feel so sad when I see a student who walks in with no pre-music. It's a tragedy.
Yeah.
Tragedy.
Well, both of my children give a lot of credit to Musikgarten, a lot. And Elise, you know, is an actor now, and there's so many things that she credits Musikgarten with, and she's so thankful. And Ben is a computer science student at Pitt, and he sees his music education, you know, as rounding out his what he can bring to computer science. You know, he thinks creatively, and he is a good communicator, and he's a good teamwork. You know, he is a good collaborator, and he attributes all of that to Musikgarten. So, yeah.
There's that interdisciplinary that in my college career, that emphasis that you need to have many things to create that functional brain, that full brain. It can't just be the few things that are taught in academia. There has to be what Gardner says, all those different brains, all those different types of learning going on. And music to me is so essential. It pulls us towards better coordination, better listening, better speech in front of people, more confidence, social development, you know, being able to work with other people, such as when we're playing music together. This is just so many things. How could we leave it out? And I guess what we were talking at the beginning, whatever your background is, if you're motivated to want to teach children and catch them early and reestablish music as a fundamental part, well, Musikgarten is the one that, for me, was the answer.
Right. And really, you can come from any background, as you say. You can have a love for children and a love for music, and then that passion to give them that foundation that we're talking about, and that's really all it takes. So many adults who, you know, are interested in bringing this to children. It's doable for anyone. You don't have to have the music degree, or you don't have to have had that experience as a child growing up. You can give that gift to the next generation. And to be honest, working in a college, I'm realizing that students in college don't know folk songs. They don't know America the Beautiful. They don't know just so many things that we all got when we were growing up. And as you say, there was a shift in society, right? So Musikgarten brings that back to families and to children, and it's good for anybody to teach, really.
Jumping on what you're saying, when a student now is studying with me, say in the graduate Musikgarten classes, and we're bringing up these themes such as Auld Lang Syne.
Yes.
I am learning to now say, have you ever heard this piece? And 90% of the time, they have no cultural connection. So many of these pieces that were for us were cues of New Year's, Auld Lang Syne. They know some Christmas carols, but even them, they're a little vague and
yeah.
How odd, you know, it doesn't make sense to me yet. I'm beginning to just keep that straight face and say, did you know this has a great history? Let's go find out about it. Where the back of my head used to say, oh, skip that piece. I'm not going to teach that. Everybody knows it.
Not anymore.
And they don't. And you know what? It's funny timing because I just made, I thought as a gift to my college group piano class for their final, for their sight reading, I'm going to make it Auld Lang Syne, because they'll read it as a 4-part harmony and they'll be like going along, and then they're going to recognize it. And that is going to be a gift to them because it'll be easier to sight read. Once they hear that melody, they'll be like, oh, I know what this is, right?
Oh, that's a great idea.
They didn't know. Like, I would say half of them had no idea what it was. I had two, well, or maybe kind of knew by the end, but they didn't know what it was called. They didn't know what the words were. Like maybe 2 or 3 of them knew, like they looked at it on the page and went, that's Auld Lang Syne. Like they didn't even start playing it and they knew. So like 2 or 3 of them. Everybody else was just sort of like hacking through it, and they'd get to the end and I'd say, so do you know what it is? You get an extra credit point if you know what it is. No, they didn't know.
Aww.
Very sad, very sad. Great musicians, but.
So that acculturation is no longer happening, even though we're so multimedia'd.
Yeah.
Multimedia doesn't mean that they're picking up those old cues, those old oral traditions that were passed from generation to generation.
And part of that, like Auld Lang Syne, is that people aren't singing the words anymore. So maybe it's not connecting in their brains, because think about it, like New Year's Rockin' Eve or whatever with, you know, now it's Ryan Seacrest for Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve. Yeah. They play that music. They play that song. Auld Lang Syne, don't they play it every year? But nobody's singing it.
Now it's Mariah Carey. I don't think you sing Auld Lang Syne, no.
But I mean, it's there, but it's not connecting. So maybe it's
because they're not. It's again, it's happening on a screen. They're separated from it. That isn't a parent or
gathered around the piano singing Auld Lang Syne.
It's just not happening. So yeah, and other important little songs. I'm sure I have a list of the 10 that we think they know that they don't know. Yeah. It's that, Facebook thing where the teacher thinks, the parent thinks, the child thinks, community thinks.
Right.
Totally different. So even with now Musikgarten students, one thing I'm beginning to understand too is, especially with the graduates, because I have more and more classes that are graduates, I'll say, do you remember this piece when we did it in book 1? And they'll go, oh, no, yeah, they have a vague memory, and I'm realizing we have to keep playing these pieces.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's all that repetition. I agree. The repetition is beautiful. And a quick story on this exact thing. When I was teaching in the schools in Dallas, okay, and remember I said I had to take Benjamin with me a lot of times. So he's just this little tot, not in school yet. Like he's probably 4, 3 or 4. And I would put him in the corner, sort of behind the whiteboard or something like that. And I had a song of the day, and I'd written up on the board, My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. So it was just the melody. And I said, okay, beginning of class. And these were 4th and 5th graders. And I said, you got to figure out what song that is, And so we started this activity. Well, they were singing the solfege and they couldn't get the song, and they were singing the solfege, and then we sang them rhythm and they were getting the rhythm, but they didn't know the song. And I was like pulling my hair out because I just wanted them to say My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. So I finally just went, Ben, what's the song? And he goes, Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. Behind the screen. I was like,
yeah. That happened. That happened a week ago, where my daughter came to spend the week with us, and we had been playing a lot of cards. And while they were doing interviews for college, for their residencies, I was working on Norman Delajoy's Piano Sonata No. 3. And the opening of the theme is okay, etc. Now, I was doing it a lot, and there are themes and variations. And about on the 4th day, we were all playing a card game, and all of a sudden my daughter starts singing, "Oh, when the saints go marching in," and I'm thinking, oh my God. Yeah, she had all that Musikgarten training. She had picked that out.
That is awesome.
And she didn't realize why she was singing it.
Right.
She didn't see
that. Fantastic.
Yeah.
There's the connection.
There's the connection right there.
It was so deep.
Woo.
And when she heard the similar, she picked it out. And I know Norman would probably be insulted because it's not based on that.
No, but still, that's great. What a great story. I love it. I get all excited with stuff like that.
Well, this really kind of brings me back to what our big topic is going to be for the next several podcasts, which is kind of the philosophy of Musikgarten, because what you're really talking about is you're talking about, all children are musical. You're talking about music meeting the needs of children. You're talking about music is needed in the home. We need to follow the child. All of these little aspects that make Musikgarten what it is what we're discussing right here. Even with talking about our past,
Right.
because those are the things that laid our foundation to be musical. So.
Yeah.
And to all the teachers out there, it doesn't take just one path to become a Musikgarten teacher. As you can see, there's several different paths that you can take to become a Musikgarten teacher. And to parents out there, I just want you to encourage you to be musical with your children. If you feel the need to be musical, sing with them. These old songs, they have a lot of value. If you don't know these old songs, you can find them. The easiest place, go to a Musikgarten class. Are we teaching right now? Yes, we are. Our teachers are teaching online. A few of them, where it's safe, they're teaching in person. Check out the Musikgarten website. We'll put the link down in the show notes here. We want to give you and your children and teachers the best musical experience possible for life, because the benefits are immeasurable. Amy and Ellen, thanks so much for sharing your experiences, sharing your life. I know it's a little hard talking about yourself, but I appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Thanks for asking. It was fun.
Thank
All right.
you.
Y'all have a good day.
Okay.